So today I'm going to dive into a session for Into the Hellfire, a MIDI cover originally performed by Lorna Shore. You saw it uploaded to our Solemn Tones YouTube channel. Why were certain choices made, and how can you apply this to your own productions to get the maximum potential out of Odin? Right here we have, first of all, like this acoustic intro, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't own any like top tier premium acoustic guitar samplers, so I just used the Logic stock acoustic guitar. But it's honestly not bad. I ended up throwing a bunch of reverb on it, like we have Echo Boy right here, we have Room, which is our own reverb. So now we have the guitars right here. You can see we have left guitar, right guitar, harmony, then this I was supposed to name it, but I guess I didn't. And then we have some solo stuff. So left guitar and right guitar, we loaded guitar 1 and guitar 2 separately. So what does this mean? In the factory presets, we have panned rhythms and panned leads, meaning you have two different sound banks. The two sample sets left and right are completely different. There's not a single shared sample. This is crucial to not have phasing issues. And they're just pre-panned for you 100% on rhythms and a little less so on leads. However, if you have two guitars that are going to be playing different things left and right, you need the ability to load them separately. So that's what I did here. We have guitar 1 soloed on the left, guitar 2 soloed on the right. And somewhere in this song, Into the Hellfire, you do indeed have differences between the performances to have some interesting harmonies going on, and so that's why I load them separately. Whenever that's not the case, I really like just loading panned rhythms because it's quicker, but here it was necessary. Beyond that, all the settings are default, I'm pretty sure. I don't think I changed anything here. Then we have this harmony thing. So in the chorus, actually, you have a harmony being played, and then we have that very, very slow guitar with the slow chords. So let's first have a look what the guitar 1 and guitar 2 sound like. So if we dive into that MIDI right here, you can see I actually haven't done that much. These are just the chords. The only thing you will notice is that I did add the little mute on the silence of the chords. By default, the human noises inside Odin already does that for you, but I wanted it even more pronounced. There's actually pretty good odds that I will end up changing the Odin 3 mutes feature, where you can choose how pronounced those sounds are even more. Let me know in the comments if that's something you want to see. But beyond that, nothing special. You know, slightly lower velocities on the higher notes in the chord, because as you know, when you strum down, the first pick is going to be harder. And then at the top, I just made it so it always plays on a specific string. So if we open Odin right here, I have the key switch for the 8 string modifier on. Now for this particular chord, that wasn't necessary in theory because this lowest note can only be played on the 8 string, but I just put it in there for safety because I did end up having other passages where the engine might want to play, you know, on a different string, and I really wanted to prioritize having it on the 8 for that really chonky sound. Whenever you feel like, oh, this riff is just, you know, a bit too high, a bit too bright and shrill, because that's the type of sound you get out of a guitar when you play on like the first fret on the 2nd string or something like that. It's really nice to work with that string selection, and I like to do it with the key switches because I know that no matter what I change about my preset, the string selection key switch will get priority. Now we then have these slow chords, which are the most known part about To the Hellfire, and these are a bit more interesting in terms of work that was being done. So what's interesting here? First of all, you will notice that I have different string select key switches for different strings. I just really wanted to ensure that when all of these strings are picked one by one, that they are at least somewhat in the same area of the fretboard so that tonally this makes sense. If you play a chord like this and it sounds like this first note is played on fret 1 and this last note is being played on fret 12, that is impossible, right? So by choosing the string carefully so that they are at least somewhat close to each other, this chord is going to make a whole lot more sense. Now, what's also interesting is I wanted these to ring out while the next note was being played. Because when you play these chords one by one, again, it's not because your pick is hitting another string that you get full silence instantly. The last notes you played are still ringing out unless you mute them. And so you will notice throughout this whole MIDI, at least for this chord progression, these very slow ones, a bunch of these notes keep on ringing into each other. It looks messy, but it sounds very, very good. One thing we have here is a slide, technically, in the original song. If you have a listen here. But I didn't slide here. And the reason is we have the auto slide function, which would have been great here. You know, if you go into playing, you turn on auto slide and then you could auto slide this. But because these are a bunch of notes going through each other at the same time, I did not want to spend time manually fixing that and automating this. So instead, I was a little lazy and I just played the notes one by one. So this one and then this one. And then I just put a key switch under this note to make it a hammer-on. Now that is not a slide, obviously. But what it does do is it gives you a note, the first one, and then a second note without any attack. And because these are so close to each other, it still sounds enough like a slide, especially in a mix, that I got away with it. Again, ideally, you would use the auto slide function to just slide into it. Or alternatively, you can use the sliding key switch right here if the slide you need is already pre-recorded in the samples. But I wanted to do the quick and dirty route, and now I get to share it with you. Maybe you can abuse this little trick as well. Now next, if we move into the main guitars again, we then get some tremolo picking. And what you will instantly notice is that I put them all at very low velocities. And that is because when you are tremolo picking, it is actually extremely hard to pick with the same strength as you would one big chord or one big chug. So I put everything at like 58 velocity so that the notes more so drown into each other. You don't have as much attack on them as well. Now later here, you will see that they then turn red again because these are higher velocities. And that's because these notes are slow enough to where you can pick strong again. So then later, we then get the really hard chugga-dugga-dugga. Once again, this is very simple because you just use notes that were played normally and then you set their velocity to like 30. So right here, as you can see, 28, 29, just anything under 30 is going to be a palm mute. Now, if you wanted these palm mutes to be even tighter, you can set the velocity even lower. So for example, like 15 or even 9, you'll have a very different type of palm mute. Then we have the next riff in that section. Again, I didn't really do anything special. All you see is that at the top I have string select on just in case, though it wasn't necessary for these low chords. And then everything that has to be a palm mute is at like 28 or 30. Anything that's not a palm mute is at regular velocities. I didn't even humanize anything here. In this next riff, it's the same idea. So here you will actually see that the key switch selection pushes you to play this on the 7th string, and you will have a very different sound if you choose to play it elsewhere. So these are always on the 8th string because there's no other way, and then these others are on the 7. Now imagine if we played this on the 8th string as well, you would have to play it super high up on the fretboard. You will have a very different sound. And then imagine if you played it even higher, maybe on the 6th string even. I personally really liked it on the 7th. And everything else, you know, pretty simple. Now next we have the chorus. Once again, I don't really do anything special here. This is just alternative picking. I haven't even changed the velocities. I haven't even changed the note timings. You absolutely could if you want to go crazy. All I did do, of course, is use the string select key switches up here. So as you can see, this is being played on the 5th string. This is being played on the 7th string. I'm just trying to make sure that everything here is more or less on the same location on the fretboard, and that's it. Now, is this exactly how the artists played the song? I don't actually think so. I mostly did this by ear. If you want to have a one-to-one copy, of course, you could go to a site with tabs and just manually choose every single note on every single string. But 99.9% of listeners would never hear that difference anyway, as long as you are keeping everything more or less realistic. And personally, when it comes to realism, when in doubt, I like to choose thicker strings. You know, here on the fretboard, you tend to get the shrill, bright guitars. Here on the fretboard, you tend to get a little more of a round, warm tone. Then here at the top, you know, that might get a little too tight sometimes, but sometimes it also sounds really, really cool. So let's keep this going. Then we have the after chorus riffing. Once again, only string selection and then some palm mutes in between. Now you could argue that I could have put some hammer-ons in here maybe, you know, on these notes in particular, but this sounded really cool to me regardless. And then after that we go right back to the tremolo picking, and then we get these shotgun sounds, you know. This is where they play these super dead chugs. This is literally just a machine gun going ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. So that's what I also try to do by putting the palm mute velocities really, really low. I think this is like 9. Yeah, this is 8. So this is pure machine gun, shotgun. This is the type of performance on guitar that usually is super aggressively edited as well, even in real life. So they're trying to make real guitars sound more fake because they want that insane hit. You know, the kick, the bass, the guitars locked in and just machine gunning you to death. And then, of course, you go right back into the groove. Of course, this whole machine gunning bit only really works when you have the rest of the song going on. You know, you have your kick drums, you have your slow cymbals, you have that slow snare. Honestly, maybe it's best that I just unmute and even turn on some vocals just for this part, so it makes more sense. With vocals and all the instruments, these machine guns are less dry, and then you can get away with them sounding, you know, really mechanical. That's the goal of them being so quick. Then afterwards, we have the same old, just a chorus and so forth. But then we get into the most exciting bit of this, at least if you're a nerd when it comes to MIDI programming like I am, and that is the solo. So let me just solo, only the guitars for this bit. We have that same riff from before, and then it goes right into the solo. So right here on the solo section, we have the string selection on. We have notes that overlap because if you see this being played on a real guitar, it's like this gradual picking from string to string without any muting. And that also creates these really eerie harmonies that really push towards the solo. You can hear it right here. Now, one little trick you see me do here, and I've done it before on the channel, is I put these little mutes on random locations, usually with string changes and fret changes and so forth, because those little crispy sounds, let's call them, really help sell that sound of the player moving their hand and not quite getting things right and so forth. You can hear it like right here especially. It really helps sell the whole thing. Now then we get to the solo, because this pre-solo part, let's say, is mostly something I programmed with Odin 2 and then later just added into Odin 3. The next part, however, is where I really utilized a bunch of the stuff that only Odin 3 can do. So yeah, this looks pretty crazy. So first I'll let you listen to this part and then I'll break it down. Okay, that is a lot. So let's solo just a solo now, and we can really break things down. So you're going to see 3 parts to the more complex type of performances. We first have just the notes being played. That's the easy part. You could either copy this from Guitar Pro tabs or something, or if you're writing yourself, I assume you've already written your music, or you know how notes work. So these notes, really nothing special. These are triplets, and some of the velocities are low. The reason is when you are sweep picking, you cannot bite into the string at the same power as normal picking. It is just impossible. You will get stuck. You will not glide off the strings as easily, and so to get that sweep of just that gentle really quick, you're gonna be at lower velocities. So right away you're seeing me have a random assortment of 58, 81, 58, and so forth. Just play around with what feels nice. That is what's gonna make most sense for sweep picking. Now the next thing is gonna be, if you're sweep picking, obviously which string you're playing on is gonna be crucial. At these speeds you can no longer afford to just pick a random string. You could choose just a position and the engine will probably get it right most of the time, but I really went ham and basically put in every single string one by one. So this solo should mostly be accurate, which is crazy. But anytime you see sweep picking, basically, it should be accurate because I went in and put all the strings in one by one. Now I know some smart people are gonna go, huh, at that point I could just play it for real. Nah, you couldn't play this for real. 99.9% of guitarists cannot play this for real. But if you can, awesome, of course. So the notes, then the string selection, and then the third part, of course, is the articulations. Now, all these articulations here, these key switches do, is define when things are up and down picked. And this is very important for sweep picking, of course, because you can only go one direction when going down, and then you might do like an alt pick for 2 notes or so, but then you go the same direction again. So that's why I decided to have specifically up and down picking key switches here. Again, though, most listeners won't even hear the difference. So if you want to be just quick, this probably doesn't matter. But I do think the result is really cool. Now here you once again see these little crispy, little extra mute noises I added. And they really help sell the whole effect. Then we go further. Once again, nothing too special happening here. Just a little crispy noises, some string select going on. I guess what's still cool to cover here is this run. I chose for these specific notes to be harder than the ones after, because you have to think how a guitarist would play this. It's like hard, soft, soft, hard, soft, soft. But that's more of a detail. Oh, one interesting thing is that in this section, there's also some vibrato. So if we go into piano roll and we go to pitch bend modulation, I had put in these pitch bends when I programmed this solo for Odin 2, but if I redid this in Odin 3, I would have just turned on force vibrato. Like literally, I would go into playing, turn on force vibrato, set the settings how I like it. I think if you turn on panned leads, you will actually by default already have really nice settings for force vibrato, and then these vibratos would be done automatically. That said, it can still be nice to do them manually if you want them to be different every time a vibrato happens, but so that's what you hear whenever these notes are long and drawn out. Now next we once again have these sweep picking type of deals. And note once again we have the little crispy chuggy duggies here between notes to kind of sell the effect. And of course, this solo also has some harmony stuff going on a different track. And then finally, we have the end where we just have more of that machine gunning craziness. Now, then we have a bunch of no guitar, because that's where you make the piggy noises. I'm no Will Ramos, but we do make really good virtual guitars. Let's keep it at that. And that is how I programmed a Lorna Shore MIDI cover. The whole thing is MIDI, of course. The bass is, I believe it was low-key, but I can double check. Yeah, it's low-key bass for the bass, Mjolnir drums for the drums, and then our one-shots as well, and Bifrost for the effects. But of course, the star of the show is our Odin 3 guitar. If you want to pick it up, of course, you can go to solemntones.com. And if you have any questions, do let me know in the comments down below. I will see you soon. Ciao.